Zuzia, Rabbi Zuzia. He was a beautiful rabbi. He lived on this earth hundreds of years ago. And he was crying. It's a famous story, you probably all know. He was crying and his disciples came up to him and said, "Why are you crying?" Rabbi Zuzia said, "I'm crying because I know what they will ask me when I stand at the gates of heaven." What will they ask you? When I stand at the gates of heaven, they won't say to me, "Zuzia, why weren't you more like Abraham?" Or "Why weren't you more like Moses?" They will say to me, "Zuzia, why weren't you Zuzia?" This is the story. There was once a boy who was ugly, stupid, and lazy. His mother used to say to him, "You are ugly, stupid, and lazy. You will probably come to nothing. You'll probably drown in the river one day." Poor boy. He didn't have much, just a flute that he made himself out of wood. And he used to walk the streets and play music. And, one day he came to this street that he didn't know was there. And he went down the street and he saw a wall that he didn't know existed. And he climbed the wall and he looked over and he saw this beautiful, beautiful garden. But more than the garden, there was a girl who was just tracing her fingers in the water. Well, he knew that she wouldn't want to talk to someone ugly and stupid and lazy like him. So what did he do? He took out his flute and he began to play. All his dreams, all his hopes, all his wishes, he played on the flute. And at the end of the day, when the sun went down, she walked towards the shadows and he jumped off the wall and his heart was full. And every day he went back and played music to that girl. And you know what happened? He began to fall in love. He used to imagine jumping off the wall and taking her in his arms and saying, "I love you, let's get married," and they'd go and live in a little hut by a river somewhere. One day, he was walking through the marketplace when he overheard some old women talking, describing a garden, and that's how he learned that that garden belonged to the Pharaoh. That girl was the Pharaoh's daughter. And now he knew for sure that a Pharaoh's daughter would never love someone ugly and stupid and lazy like him. And he couldn't bring himself to go home. He just walked through the town beyond the walls, and that night he sat around with some merchants around a fire, talking about these strange and wondrous things as merchants do. And he overheard one of them say, "Habibi, he can do anything." And the boy said, "This Habibi, can he change a man's soul? He can do anything. Where do I find him?" 3 days, 3 nights in that direction. And so he walked 3 days, 3 nights in that direction. In the meantime, when he didn't come home, his mother thought he must have drowned in the river. She had a little funeral for him. 3 days, 3 nights. He came to an oasis, in a hut. And he knocked on the door, and an old man with a long beard came to the door. "Are you Habibi?" "I am." "Can you change a man's soul?" "I can. But once you change your soul, you can never change it back." "That's all right. I want to be handsome and extraordinary. I want to be charismatic. I want to be a great warrior. I want to be strong and powerful. I want people to meet me and never forget me." "And what have you for me?" Well, he didn't have much, just his flute. So he gave his flute to Habibi. 3 years later, Egypt was at war. The soldiers in the desert were about to accept this terrible defeat when suddenly across the sand came this man dressed in black. So powerful they could feel him from so far away. As he approached, they just split like the Red Sea. He walked between them. He stood before the Pharaoh. He said, "Let me take your men into battle. I'll bring you more treasure, more land, more prisoners than you could ever imagine." And the Pharaoh, as if entranced, just said, "Do it." And true to his word, 3 months later, the Black Prince, that's what he called himself, came back with this incredible victory for Egypt. And the Pharaoh was so grateful, he said, "You name your price. You can have half my treasure, you can have half my land, you can have my daughter's hand in marriage. What do you want? And the Black Prince said, I shall come back 1 month to the day for my reward. You can imagine all the women talking about this handsome man for a whole month. They got themselves into a complete frenzy. They were getting their hair done and their faces done. And on the day he was to arrive, they swept the streets and strewed it with flowers. People hanging out windows and on the roofs. And as the Black Prince walked down that kingdom, women just fainted as he walked. And he stood before the Pharaoh and his daughter. And he said, name your price. Half my land, half my treasure, my daughter's hand, what do you want? And the Black Prince, never taking his eyes off that girl, said, I would like to marry your daughter. And there was silence. And then she stood up and she said, Father, I will marry him if you want, but first I want to tell you my story. 3 years ago there was a boy. He used to sit on the wall of our garden. He used to play music that was so beautiful. It was as if he knew all my dreams, all my hopes, all my wishes. I loved him. I used to imagine he would jump off the wall and take me in his arms and say, I love you, let's get married, and we'd go and live in a little hut by a river somewhere. But he drowned. He died. His mother had a funeral for him. And I promised myself I'd never love anyone like that again. And the Black Prince said, I once loved like that. I won't make you marry me. And with that, he turned around. He walked out of the palace beyond the town into the desert and was never seen or heard from again. And that's the end of the story. I'm sorry. Now I want to ask you, hands up if you liked the end of that story. Hands up if you didn't really like the end of that story. Okay, so it's your story. Give me another end. How would you like it to end?
I think he should have at least had a conversation.
At least?
I think he should have at least had a go at going back to the Habibi.
Yeah?
Habibi will turn him down in the end. He will learn that final lesson.
Oh,
but
nice.
he didn't. We didn't even know he had a go.
Yeah.
And I think maybe had.
You just want him to fight a little harder.
I'll give you anything to turn it back. I'll give you anything.
Right.
And Habibi will turn him down. But I think that was that.
Okay, I really get that. Anyone else?
Yeah. What if him and the girl talked to each other? What if he actually said to her, I was that boy?
I was that.
But then
boy.
he's not, is he? Because he changed himself.
Yeah,
and
but
therefore-
so we can see. So he says, I was that boy.
Yeah.
And then what do you think she
Well,
might
I
say?
don't know. I don't know. It's a conversation that never happened. I actually quite like the ending.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking that could be.
Yeah, at
something.
least, yeah, rather than
Yeah.
just turning around and
So it's almost like he made it theoretically something else, but didn't even get her a chance to know that he was that boy.
Yeah.
He
But
looked
he
deep into her eyes
He looked deep into her eyes.
and said, I was that boy, and my love for you was so deep that I was prepared to trek across the greatest deserts to find the oasis where the great baby lived. I was prepared to give my soul to become someone else that I thought that you would love in order to be the one that you were. I see now your love is deeper than that. Therefore, I still ask you, will you still love me?
Well, let's just make another flute, have the money and run off.
I think I would ask John,
Are we
and I'll come
dragging
to you in a
this
sec.
out?
Yeah, but yeah, what I would say is that
She was loving him because he seemed to love himself.
he says, I once loved like that. And I'm not sure if the Black Prince could love in the same way as that boy did. I'm not sure.
Maybe when he goes to see Habibi, Habibi somehow gives him another kind of chance to recognise his own power and go back to the mother, because the mother's an interesting character.
Yes,
She's
yeah.
actually the one that starts off him believing
Yes.
that he's all of these things.
So people that are successful are incapable of love, is that what you're saying?
people who are successful, did you say, are capable, aren't capable.
Are incapable
No,
of love.
I'm saying that he changed his soul, and in that moment he said, I
Well,
once loved
but
like
you
that.
just said he wasn't capable of the
No,
same love as the
I
boy.
said that in response to him saying, I once loved like that, maybe it meant, I don't know.
He did a hell of a lot to get her.
They were-
But he didn't need
He
to
did a hell of a lot to get her.
He did, yes,
But
yeah.
it just really, really negates what she fell in love with. She fell in love with somebody who seemed to be something else. And him actually going and doing all that made him into another, literally. And it wasn't the one she fell in love with.
Another mistake he made.
Yeah. Well, look, I would say this. I would say that that story,
How much do women want?
I would say that story, in finding new endings for it, for me, needs to preserve the fact that if you sell your soul, there has to be a price. It's not enough to be able to say, I am that boy, and they fall in happily ever after. And there needs to be a price, because when we betray ourselves, the essence of ourselves, there's always a price. So that's what I would say for me, I would like to preserve. There was one girl at a school once who had the most beautiful ending. She said that for her, he left, went into the desert, and he began to die of starvation and thirst. And a little boy found him and dragged him into the shade and began to feed him and give him water and give him his strength. And as he was gaining his strength, he played on his flute. This boy played on his flute. And that experience somehow brought back to him his essential self, which is a nice sort of story as well. Yeah, go, yeah.
Because it's like, I'm forever the romantic. And I was thinking, I didn't realise what I said before romance, it just came up again, that he could court her. Yeah, there's no need to say I was this person, or, he could just say, let's not have I won't take your hand in marriage. Let's see where this
Let's
goes.
date a while.
He could court her.
Yeah.
Because the essence, I think, of who he was probably is still there. And in relationship with her, they could nurture each other to rediscover them.
Okay.
I've got an ending.
Good.
Well,
Guys, do
maybe.
you want to come and bring your chairs a little closer? Just come and join the family. Hi, how are you?
There's room at the end here.
No problem, so good to see you.
I was just thinking,
Yeah.
does the story have to have a happy ending? Because it's strong like that.
Yeah.
Because it makes you reflect about what that meaning is.
Yes.
Don't lose yourself.
Yeah.
Keep true to yourself.
Well,
That's essentially-
how I do that is I allow people to have different endings, but then I bring it back to there needs to be a price, and so it reminds them. But some people are not satisfied with that ending until we work through it a little bit. So that's
I
what I
think the
do.
fact that his mother,
I did too. Yeah.
his mother actually described him
Yes.
his whole life, criticised him,
Yeah.
and that's who he thought he was.
Yes.
But actually, he might not have been like that. He might have just been absolutely.
He clearly wasn't,
clearly
because he
wasn't,
played
but
beautiful
The
music. Yeah.
constant criticism, the actual, the depth and the strength and the accusations ongoing. It was like a
Yeah.
dripping tap.
Yes.
where
Yes.
He eventually saw himself as that person.
Yes.
But deep down, he actually had all the opposite qualities.
Yes.
And so.
Yeah. There's a great truth.
Maybe-
Yeah.
No, you wanted to.
I was just going to say, but now I'm getting lost with it. Just basically that, like what Barbara was just saying, the mother was really critical, so he had a really low self-esteem and he didn't like himself and he thought he was unworthy. So he went searching for someone and something, and then maybe he became whole. So when the girl said that she didn't love him, it didn't matter because he had self-love and he didn't need that anyway. So they were able to move away.
Yeah.
He was able to leave her. He was complete.
Yeah, so the self-love is actually the most important thing. because
Ultimately,
in the end we
absolutely.
found that.
Otherwise, he wasn't the boy. Yeah.
No,
Because
yeah.
he wasn't the boy.
Yes, right.
Maybe
Okay, so-
maybe gives him a mirror instead, and then gives him something else to say.
Right. Gives him a mirror. That's nice. Yeah. Well, it's a deep story. We could spend all day on it, but let's not. I'm just going to tell you a little Hasidic phrase that actually kind of really relates to this story. You have to listen carefully. It's a little complicated. If I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am I and you are you. But if I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am am not I, and you are not you.
Lovely.
Should I say it one more time?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a second.
You want to say it first? Okay. Okay, so we ready? If I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am I and you are you. But if I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am not I, and you are not you. You with me? It's a goodie, isn't it?
Follows the last story.
It does. Well,
What is
that's
that other thing?
incredible how that happened.
What's that thing about if I am not for me, then who is for me? What's that other?
It's
Aim,
if I am not for me, if I am not for myself, then who will be for me? But if I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? So at the moment, yeah, I often base a
That's
program
true,
on
yeah.
that. So at the moment we're doing if I am not for myself, who will be for me? So I'm going to move that a little bit now. I want to tell you a story from the Torah, from the Bible. Since we're in a church and I don't have to feel embarrassed about it, I can tell a story from the Bible. And I say that because, very often if I'm giving a workshop and we're talking and we're working on a Sumerian myth or a Greek myth, everyone's fine. But if I start to say, okay, well, let's work on a story from the Bible, everyone gets stuck. They remember their childhood and their hurts and everything, all the baggage that comes with the original mythology of us, whether it's Torah or Bible, and no one can sort of get rid of it. So I'm just going to tell you the story as I know it, about Jacob. This is my very favorite story, and it's a very defining story for me, and it's following on from these ideas of not betraying yourself. So I'll just remind you about Jacob. Rebecca, his mother, was pregnant with twins, and they were fighting inside her, and she knew even then that the youngest was going to have power over the oldest. And so they were born. Esau was born first. He was called Esau because he was this little red, ruddy kind of thing. I can't imagine him being as sweet as child. And then there was Jacob, the one that was born second, and he was holding onto the heel of his brother. And Yaakov, or Jacob, means heel. But it also means the betrayer. When someone's a heel, that comes from Jacob. And so Jacob grew up close to his mother. He was a poet, and he was, he liked to look after the sheep. And Esau was a hunter. He would go out, and he was the favorite of his father. And then one day, Esau came very hungry back after having a whole day of hunting, and Jacob was cooking some lentil soup. And Esau said, "Oh, give me some of that soup, I'm so hungry." And Jacob said, "Well, you give me your birthright, I'll give you the soup." He said, "Just take it, I want the soup." So it was done. The deal was set. Jacob became the inheritor of the birthright. And then sometime later, Jacob's father, who was called Isaac, was blind, was going to give his blessing to the older son, which is the way it's done. And while Esau was hunting, Rebekah called Jacob to her and said, "Listen, your father's going to give his blessing to Esau. Just do what I tell you to do. Go and kill a goat and put the skin of the goat on your arms, so that when your father, blind as he is, puts his hand on you, he will think you're Esau because he's so much hairier than you." And so he went out and he killed the goat and he put the skin on his arms and he made some goat meat, and he went to his father and he said, "Hello, Father, it's me, Esau. I'm ready for my blessing." And Isaac says, "You sound like Jacob. Let me feel you." Feels his arm, says, "Oh, okay, you feel like Esau." And he gave him the blessing. And so when Esau came and he knelt before his father and said, "It's me, Esau, Father, I'm ready for my blessing," Isaac said, "I already gave it to you." "No, Father, you didn't give it to me. I must have given it to your brother." And Esau says, "How well named he is." Look at that. How well named he is, because he has betrayed us. And he becomes murderous. He wants to kill him. And so Jacob has to run. And on that first night, without his parents, without his family, in a forest, he is frightened. And he takes a rock for a pillow. and he falls asleep and he has a dream of a ladder with angels going up and down. And the rabbis say, why up and down, not down and up, as you'd expect? Because the angels live amongst us. Up and down. Up and down. And then he finds himself at his kinsman, at his uncle's place, Laban. He sees Rachel by a well, falls madly in love instantly. He goes to see his uncle and says, I love that girl, Rachel. Can I marry her? And Laban says, yeah, you work for me for 7 years and you can marry her. And you know what happens after 7 years? They get married and he looks in the morning, not Rachel, but his first, the older sister, Leah. So what happened to him is what he did to his brother. The betrayer is betrayed. The wrong brother gets the blessing, the wrong daughter gets the husband. That's how it is. The betrayer is betrayed. And there are all these little betrayals all through his life, of Laban and the sheep and the goats and all through his life are betrayings and betrayals. And then one day Jacob feels, then finally after 14 years he marries Rachel, and after 21 years of working with Laban, Jacob says, I need to make peace with my brother. So he packs up everything. He's now a rich man. And the first act of peace that Jacob does with his brother is he gathers all of the very finest of his sheep and his goat and the things that he's amassed, and he gives them to a servant and he says, these are for my brother, my master. Tell him they are from his servant, Jacob. That's the first act of peace. And then he takes all of his family to a place called Machanaim, which means 2 camps. And he separates everything he has in half. He thinks to himself, if Esau comes with his 100,000 men, because he's very powerful now, and wants to kill me, maybe they'll just kill half. Maybe half of what I have. Half of my family will survive. Machanaim, 2 camps. And then he has these 2 camps within himself. He has this conversation. I know I don't deserve to be forgiven, but you did say I would one day be a great nation. And maybe I will die and all my family will die and be killed, but you did say that one day my children will number the stars of the sky and the grains of the sand. Faith and fear. 2 camps. And then he says to all of his family, stay here, I've got to do this alone. And he crosses the river. And the sun goes down. And something comes towards him. Some being, some entity. And begins to wrestle with him. And it's wrestling to the death. This is not a game. Halfway through the night, his thigh has been dislocated. And still he wrestles on, wrestles on. And then finally, early hours in the morning, the angel, the being, is held down by Jacob. And the angel says, let me go, it's nearly morning. Maybe we only wrestle with these things in the dark. And Jacob said, I will not let you go until you bless me. Maybe he wanted a legitimate blessing. And the angel said, all right, what's your name? And Jacob says, I am Jacob. Not my mother made me do it. Not my brother sold it to me. I am the betrayer. And the angel says, now that you have done this, you will no longer be Jacob. You will be Israel. Israel, because you have seen God face to face and survived. And then Jacob says, and who are you? But he's gone. And the sun begins to rise. And Jacob, who will forever limp, limped across the river to the sun rising before him. And there he sees his brother and 100,000 men. And he goes up to his brother Esau. And Esau says to him, who gave me all those gifts? And Jacob said, it was me, brother. And Esau says, you don't need to. You're my brother. And Jacob looks him in the face. And he says, you know, brother, when I look you in the face, I see the face of God. And that's the story.
I like the one that follows on from that
Oh, yeah?
story of Joseph.
Yes, it's a wonderful story.
Jacob's son.
Yes, yes. Well, Jacob has a few more betrayals to deal with, even though he is Israel now.
And Joseph was betrayed.
Well, Jacob is betrayed by his son, saying that he was killed when he's
Yeah.
not. I mean, there's, Jacob's life is a difficult one, but there is transformation in the ability to speak it, to speak the worst of us, to say this is what was coming from me then. I was jealous. I was full of malice. If we speak it may not have its hold on us, and we can transform it. That's what I think that story tells me. How are we going?